Ladies and gentlemen, what I want to do is tell you about some of my favorite Necromancer legendary items. In this game, there's a few key legendary items that once you acquire them, enable some really fun, unique playstyles within the Necromancer builds. And I want to show you some of my favorite ones today. Let's get right into probably my favorite and most used one right off the beginning, which is the Rotspur. Rotspur itself, what it does is makes it where the explosion from the corpse now generates a poison AoE cloud and does continual damage. What this allows us to do is trigger or have multiple chances to really trigger any effect in our gems, for instance, Seeping Bile, or even the 1-star Everlasting Torment to get multiple chances to proc things like critical hits or additional DPS. Now, on the top of that, the Rotspur itself, since it does continual damage, if the explosion radius misses and you're kiting, people will go through it and eventually gain damage anyway. The Rotspur itself is one of my favorite legendaries, if not overall my favorite legendary for the Necromancer, and it's the build that I've been using. It's one of the key components of most of my DPS within the build I'm using when I'm pushing challenge rifts. Now, on top of the shoulders, there's one other shoulder that I've been talking with some of my fellow Necromancers that we agree potentially is up there as well, which is the one that I don't have, the Lone Preserver, which what it does is now inflicts a stack and chill, which can freeze enemies when stacked. This is sort of a way to get a slow into your kit without really having a slow built into your kit. You'll have less damage overall than the Rotspur, but this will give you a little bit of greater control of the minions itself when you're kiting and things like the challenge rifts, okay? Now let's move on to one of my other favorite, which is going to be Parting Gifts. Parting Gifts is another, in my opinion, top tier legendary item. This one makes it where when you have bone armor, gives you instead, and I'll show you an example because I have it right now, instead gives you these 5 little like daggers floating around you, bones floating around you. And each time you get hit, it removes one of these, and each one of these hits, it makes you completely immune to that source of damage. So it's sort of weak to multiple strikes really quickly and very strong against one singular hit like boss hits, for instance. This also works on teams as well. So for that reason, when you're in the party, it's really good when you're doing like Heliquary or raiding bosses, or even in PvP, it can be pretty good too. It doesn't work so good against things like Whirlwind, where there's lots of multiple hits, but it's very strong in PvE especially. Now, in chest plates, there's one other chest plate that's definitely worth mentioning, which is going to be the Backbone. What the Backbone does is it allows you to raise a giant wall, and what a singular pillar really is more accurate, and I'll show you here real quick. And what this pillar does is it knocks people up, but it also does a slow, so you can use this pillar both in PvE as a way to slow minions and kite them. That's what it looks like there. Anything around it's going to be slowed, as well as in PvP to knock people up by just putting the pillar underneath them. It'll actually knock them into the sky, and that's a form of CC as well. For this reason, this is another, in my personal opinion, top tier legendary item. So just to start with those ones. Now, if you're doing the summons build, you're going to want Guided by Maggots for your pants, which makes it where your dark curse, when you use it on top of your minions, increases their attack speed real quick. So you can do a full build of basically summons and then use Guided by Maggots to be able to increase the attack speed of them as well. But there's other pants that I've noticed that are pretty good too. I find myself either using the bone armor duration when I just want to be able to have that bone armor longer, or using the Dark Curse that does continual damage on the ground combined with Rotspur to be able to have a build where I'm just continually doing AoE damage in big AoE puddles, and then I'm trying to either slow them around that puddle or get them to really walk through that puddle somehow, and that's where a large portion of my damage is coming from. So this item itself is another particular one that you can use if you're doing sort of the damage over time build. There's a few other ones here like Proximo Fear. I haven't got this one yet. I really want this one. This makes it where you can fear people when you touch them in Wraith form, which is really good in PvP in particular. This is another form of CC essentially, and CC is really strong in PvP and Wraith form strong in PvP because you're basically immune during those times. It's invulnerability frames more or less, which that is very strong in PvP as well. Speaking of in PvP, there's a couple items in PvP that I think aren't too bad. In particular, Blight Maw makes it where you poison enemies hit with your basic attack over time. The poison over time can be highly annoying because people are getting ticked for damage while they're trying to bandage, for instance. There's a couple other items, but really I think it boils down to Desolatoria for PvE, where Desolatoria is essentially This item I'm wearing right here looks great, but on top of it, it makes it where you have that Molten Golem, okay? And the Molten Golem is going to do a big chunk of continual AoE damage, as well as you have a tank, basically, and of course you get the big jumping damage as well. The Molten Golem, in my opinion, is one of our best continual damage type of moves, so you need the Desolatoria for that. A couple different options for helmets. There is the Shudder Spike for PvP. Speaking of PvP, there's another one, the No Mouth Face for PvP. These are all basically CC related type of helmets. I do actually kind of like the one that does additional bleeding damage, the Hideous Dawning. It's an insta-cast, does damage over time as well, can work in PvE, PvP. Now, the Gilded Leash, I've tried to a good amount of time now. I've tried this one. And the Skeleton Captain seems okay when you're farming things like Elder Rifts, or you're just farming like straight up, just farming overworld meanings. Whenever you can blow through something, and the exploding skeletons I don't like at all. The skeleton champions, however, with the skeleton archers, I feel like are quite good in PvP because the archers almost feel like aimbot, like those arrows land 9 out of 10 times. That's how I feel about the helmets, which sort of leaves us with the shields. Now, the shields themselves, there's only a couple I like. Baleful Trinity, welcome in. Baleful Trinity is the one I picked out of the Battle Pass. Don't regret it. I think it's probably the best for when you're continually just clearing trash mobs. Welcome in can be all right if you're doing the full sort of summons type of build. I find that the standard mage can almost be better than the powerful mage, though, weirdly enough. The powerful mage does more damage, but the other mage has a way quicker cooldown, which I find quite important. You could go the Command Golem, damage is increased if you're running like a Desolatoria build, but me, myself, personally, I find myself liking Baleful Trinity, and then, if maybe not Baleful Trinity, like I actually like Pyre's Allure, where you can ignite the Bone Wall if you're trying to do some kind of either Bone Wall PvE slow or Bone Wall PvP type of thing. I've used this a little bit too. Not a great amount of damage, but it worked. I'm gonna wrap it up for my thoughts on Necromancer legendary items. If you appreciated this video, consider subscribing by hitting the red button or liking the video if you're already a subscriber and you want to help me out. Again, thanks so much. Love y'all. See you on the next guide.